Hey, how's it going, hockey fans? Thanks for tuning in to the Post Huggers podcast. And with me, as always, is Goldie. How goes it today, Goldie?
It's going pretty good, going good. Been busy, but we're here and we're having fun, and we're going to be talking about free agents and the teams we think made the biggest splashes yesterday. Yeah. So how are you doing?
I am hanging in there. But once again, from the Pigeonhole Hockey podcast, we got our buddy Chris here to come in, chime in, and give his opinions too on the free agent absolute, it can't even call it frenzy, dude. Like that was bizarre yesterday.
It was
How
a
you doing,
feast.
Chris?
It was a free agent feast.
How
Every
you
free
doing?
Yeah,
agent.
yeah. I've been wiping the tears away from my eyes as a Sabres fan, just trying to find the positives in life.
Hey, I heard you guys just signed Carey Price. Congratulations.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised at this point. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
We need to do something after buying out that contract. We need to do something with that money, and the answer cannot be Zucker. It can't be. But that's not what this podcast is about.
All right, so we're going to go into some teams that we really think made the biggest splashes in free agency. We're not going to cover everybody because some teams didn't do a damn thing,
Some teams
which is
only
perfectly
signed-
fine
yeah.
and smart.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Some teams only signed one or two guys, and they were minor leaguers. They weren't for the majors. Let's just put it that way. But let's get into it. Thank you for TSN for coming back online. We tried to shoot this podcast earlier, and it crashed on us. So thank you, TSN, for coming back online to make this possible. Because you are the easiest way to follow everything that is happening in the free agent frenzy. So thank you.
All right, so one of the teams that's piqued my interest, okay, I made this statement, and Goldie, I think anybody who watched the playoffs agreed the Washington Capitals limped in and they limped out of the playoffs.
Yes, they did.
And they're not packing it in. They're going for it.
They are going for it. They are doing the opposite of giving up. They are going to sign every old guy they can and every young guy they can get their hands on. That is basically what me and you talked about, is they are going for anyone that is willing to sign and to play for the Washington Capitals. They don't care who.
And so the Connor McMichael contract, great young player, did really well for them last year. 23 years old, great contract, and that's just a re-signing already. He was a free agent.
Yep.
They went and snagged Matt Roy.
Matt Roy from the Kings. Yeah, there was issues there with him wanting to sign in LA, and he said basically, no, I will not be re-signing in LA. And now he is a Washington Capital for at least 6 years at a $5.75 million cap hit. That's a good signing, in my opinion.
Okay.
He's a pretty solid defenseman, and he's underrated, as so many players are when they play on the West Coast. So he is definitely an underrated player there.
And then Taylor Radish taking a shot on him at $1 million a year, right winger. So not a bad signing. He's 26, grabbing Duheim again, another one at, 27 years old.
Yep.
1.85. These aren't what's going to kill them right now, at all.
And also they did trade for Logan Thompson. So that is another thing. They have upgraded their goaltending to another level. They now have two left-handers on that team. That'll be interesting to watch them play. But this team all of a sudden has become a great team as of 10 years ago. But I think they did improve in the areas that they lacked. And I don't know how Chris feels, but I'm going to shoot it on over to him real quick and see what his thoughts are on what their additions are. So Chris, what are your thoughts on these signings for the Washington Capitals and where they're at right now?
Well, I'm like, it's the Pittsburgh Penguins 2.0 is how I feel about it. It's a team that isn't giving up on the fact that they want another run at the Cup. I don't think they have a team that's capable of making another run at the Cup, but that's not going to stop this team as long as they have a healthy Ovechkin. They're going to make an attempt for it, which I feel like is Pittsburgh. As long as they have a healthy Crosby, they're going to be making an attempt for it.
Yeah.
So they're not doing the whole breakdown Chicago was doing after, Kane and Tays. So I don't know. I think I can't say their signings are questionable. Their signings are, I think, in line with what I've seen out of Washington in the past. I think it's being built around Ovi getting that record and making a run for the Cup. But it's going to be a terrifying team to look at once Ovechkin leaves, because I know at the end of the day he wants to get that record, and I think he's made it very clear that after he's done with the National Hockey League, he wants to end his hockey career back with Dynamo Moscow. So that's where he's probably, I won't say he's going to Yager it. He won't play into his 50s. He's not going to be the guy who dies on the ice, like Yager's basically said he will do. But as long as Ovechkin's healthy and playing, the Capitals are going to try to do what they can to build around him, yet what looks to us questionable for the future. They're doing something that doesn't make sense maybe right now, but is making sense post Ovechkin. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but even looking at post Ovechkin, right? So they do have some young players, and we'll get to that when we analyze it. So I just want this one opinion because, you watch them in the playoffs this year. Their signings, do you think that pushes them to be a threat to go to the Stanley Cup?
No.
There we go.
No.
All right. So that one's answered. So
that was a resounding no. That was a no from the bleachers.
And just so you know, guys, going back to it, if you don't know Chris was cheering for the Capitals. They were one of his teams because he would, he's moved around more than anybody I've ever known in my life.
Yep.
And, there was, the big, big thing with the Capitals is, that again, Chris alluded to that, was chasing for Ovechkin to get that record. And I just can't see compromising your future to do that, but maybe one more year and they pack it in if it doesn't work out. Right. So, Okay, so moving on over, this is a team that we think did pretty darn well, and they shocked everybody last year, by making the playoffs and doing pretty damn well in it.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, they signed Vinny Hinostroza.
Yes.
I didn't even see that. Skinny Vinny got signed too. My goodness.
Yeah, no, this team, in my opinion, so far in free agency, has won free agency. They have made all the right moves they needed to improve this team around winning a Stanley Cup. I think that run they went on last year really showed the front office that they needed to make this move, and that, hey, we made the playoffs after we thought it was a retooling year. We didn't get slapped around in the playoffs, but we also didn't do what we wanted to do in the playoffs. And they added Jonathan Marchessault, Steven Stamkos, Braden. How the fuck do you
Brady
say
Shea?
that?
Brady
Thank
Shea.
you. Had a brain fart there. It happens. But those three names alone make them, in my eyes, a Stanley Cup team. They really are. And I've said this to both Steve and Chris that I believe that they will win the Western Conference this year. With these moves. They also locked down UC Saros, which is huge. They also upgraded their backup goaltender, having, I believe, Scott Wedgwood is, if I'm not mistaken.
For him to be I'd have to do my own research on Scotchwood, on Wedgwood, to say that he'd be a solid.
He has had good seasons with Dallas.
He was a solid. He was a solid backup again on a good defensive team.
Yep.
But the Predators are also a good defensive team. So
and they got better.
So I'm all good for Goldie here going just all out saying, yeah, this is going to be the team to win. That'll push to win the Western Conference and push on over. For me right now, there's still teams like the sleepers of the Colorado Avalanche that haven't done much. The Edmonton Oilers got better. Too, right? So it's going to be interesting. The only thing the biggest edge that I think the Predators have over the Oilers, for example, is defense and goaltending. That's massive, right? To me, that one's absolutely massive. But yeah, so since we're already going to be bringing them up, let's take a look at what the Oilers did yesterday. But yeah, great job by the Nashville Predators, just changing that identity, right? So
yeah. And I agree with Heath. I think that they've marketably upgraded themselves. I think they're definitely going to be a contender next year. But like I said, I think maybe outside of the Wedgwood signing, I think everything they've done has been really positive.
Yeah. I can't argue with that one bit whatsoever. I totally agree there. But now, Edmonton Oilers, okay? interesting team. They've let a few guys go, but then they went ahead and signed a lot of guys, right? So
Yes.
Henrique looked pretty.
Resigns.
Henrique looked pretty good with them, right?
Yeah.
So he's coming back and he added stuff. Janmark was huge in the playoffs, right? Re-signing him. Jeff Skinner.
Don't get me started.
Gotta get you started on this, Chris. Gotta do it.
That's a big upgrade for them. I mean, they've got not big upgrade. It's he's a point producer. Again, he's not going to be great on the back end. He's not. Don't put him on a power play. But you put him on a top 6, and he is going to produce points. He is going to light it up. $3 million for the point production he could have this year.
Yeah,
is an absolute steal.
Oh, it is.
Buffalo, shame on you. Unless something was in place, you don't buy him out. That's it. Moving on.
Yeah, no, and then they brought back Corey Perry, so they obviously liked that they got to the Stanley Cup. So they wanted to bring him back. If you don't know, he's been to the Stanley Cup, I believe, 4 of the last 5 years on 4 different teams. Pretty impressive stuff there. They also were able to get Colin Diella, who I believe is just going to be an AHL kind of guy, up and down, depending on what their goaltending situation looks like. And they got Victor Arvidsson from the Kings, which is another big signing. So is Josh Brown, who's a defenseman for them. Not really sure how some of these guys are going to fit into their lineup. But they retained the guys they needed to retain, and they got rid of the guys they don't. This team definitely needs to get rid of that Kane contract. And then they'll be a top competitor in my eyes. Connor Brown's re-signing with them for a year is also a huge deal.
Stetcher on defense is a good one too.
Stetcher on defense is a big one.
Arvidsson.
Yeah, that's a big signing. But if he gets, the thing with him is, can he stay healthy? But I guess if you can't beat him, join him, right? He's been on the Kings last couple of seasons and they've lost each and every time in the first round to them. And I will say, to a fault of Arvidsson at times. The first season that they played him, I believe, was a few seasons ago, and he was out with a back injury, and then he was out the season after with a back injury. So he's injury prone. Oilers fans, expect him to not play all 82 games, but when he's in the lineup, he makes a difference.
Yep. So the Edmonton Oilers are still going to be one heck of a team going into next season's playoffs yet again.
Yep.
I don't expect them to have that slow start that they had, and apparently Mick Jesus does not need surgery. So
how do we feel about their goaltending situation?
Not great.
Not great. They signed Pickard again. And that's just they're going to overpay Skinner. We all know that's going to happen. Skinner, honestly, in my opinion, looked really good down the stretch of the regular season. He also looked really good in the Stanley Cup final, the last 4 games. Other than that, it was it really wasn't a flashy performance from him. But that's not his style. Do
you think this team can win the Stanley Cup with their current setup? With
their current setup, I think they got better. I think they were in the Stanley Cup final this year. But with the moves that the moves that Nashville made them a better hockey team than most people think they're going to be in the West.
Well, they've got severe line depth. Now
they've got severe line depth. Yeah.
The only thing I'm going to say about the Oilers is the Oilers figured it out really well in the playoffs, and I give credit to their new coach. He was not overplaying their big 2. He wasn't overplaying them. He found people like Brown who stepped into an incredible role on the PK, right?
Yep.
And using Hyman, another guy with speed that can go get you shorties and kill it off. So, Edmonton still got a scary team. It's just you wish they would have went out and got a goaltender, but who knows? We're still early on here, right?
Yeah.
They may just go get themselves another steady, and so they have a 1A, 1B, but they got better. Another team, goalie, you'll talk about them with quite affection. The Los Angeles Kings.
Yeah. I've seen a couple takes on this team, and I kind of agree with the majority of them. The ownership group of the Los Angeles Kings needs to change. There is no accountability for bad contracts on this team. There's no accountability for basically bad play on this team. Yeah, they signed good, decent guys. Is Warren Fogle worth the $3.5 million? Probably, but that's a little bit of a stretch. You know, you're getting old guys signed. I mean, look at Trevor Lewis signed again for, not much, but he's still signed, right? The Kings have one of the best development team, one of the best young AHL teams there is, and they're not letting any of them play at the NHL level, and that screams volumes to me. I think the Phoenix Copley signing is actually a good signing. I don't disagree with them re-signing him there. He obviously tore his ACL this year and didn't have the season he wanted to have. He apparently was dealing with injuries throughout the season, but then ended up tearing his ACL in practice. That's very unfortunate. I'm glad they gave him another contract and let go. He is back to skating, so there's no problem there with him being ready for development camp and being ready for, training camp. Alex Turcotte, you got to let him play. Sorry, he's got to be an NHL guy next year for them. Me and Steve were talking about this. They have like 7 forwards right now. They do not have the forward depth they need to go anywhere near a Stanley Cup, let alone a first-round playoff win. And if you'd scroll up there, Steve, I believe there's 2 more signings that were missing. If I'm not, a couple more. They signed Tyler Madden. Haven't really done much with him. They basically traded Tyler Toffoli away for him and I don't believe he's touched the NHL ice. The Kings are in trouble. If you're a Kings fan, there's problems starting from the ownership group down. There's inside talk that the GMs and the owners don't agree on things, and that the GMs are overriding the owners. That just can't happen. This team and this organization is a mess right now in my eyes, from the outside in. And I don't know how you guys feel about it, but it does not seem like the Kings are going in the right direction. It seems like they are going in the wrong direction.
So to me, this is like the last hurrah for Blake and company, to make a push to solidify this team, or else they got to go and they got to get a fresh take on it. The Pierre-Luc Dubois thing was an absolute disaster, disaster. And now they're paying the price for that. Right. So, that's all we can say about the Kings here. Now, the Toronto Maple Leafs we have up next. All right. And, their big one that they did, for them, because I always love this major signing. They got Max Domi listed under there. I wouldn't call him major.
I was trying to understand that one too. I'm like, his cap hits 3.75. It's 4 years. This isn't a major signing. It's just he has his dad's name.
I believe that they go off of stats and statistics for the major signings, because there are guys with higher cap hits and both these guys that aren't major signings. On other teams. So I believe they go off of stats and statistics for that, but I could be completely wrong. With that being said,
where's TSN based out of?
Canada. Yeah.
Well, one specific place, the Toronto Sports Network.
Yeah.
But anyway,
okay, that makes sense.
We digress. We do like what they did in goal.
Yes.
They got Joseph Woll and they got Stolers. So we think they're going to be pretty set, in goal, and they didn't overpay either of them. The big one here is they needed a more physical defense, right? So they went out and they got Chris Tanev. Problem is, it's a 6-year contract. He'll be 40. Probably has another good 3 years left in the tank to see how well he does. And again, Tanev proved me wrong. Hopefully you got the fountain of youth in you and you can play up until you're 40 and do a really good job. But you're a defender. You're a physical defender. That's going to be tough.
Yep.
The next one is this guy. Again, love him. From his days in Arizona, he's got that tricky wrister from the blue line that can find the net. He can move the puck well. It was just a confidence thing for him. And hopefully they're not putting him on the top pairing. Putting him on a lower pairing may really help out well, and he can help the power play. Matt Murray's backup. I liked Hakanpää's, steal for them. Like, that was another good one to shore up their defense.
Yep.
But they still got Mitch Marner to deal with and Robertson, right? So Toronto did well. I think they're solidifying their defense is better than last year. Their goaltending
100%.
is definitely better than last year.
Yeah.
Just figure out the offense side of stuff, right? And then
Yeah.
they'll have that. So Leafs did pretty darn good. Aha, now here's a big one. Here we go. How do you think they did? So, Chris, how do you think the Tampa Bay Lightning roster looks compared to last year?
Well, sorry, something just fell.
That's okay.
As long as it wasn't you, we're good.
No, not yet. That's coming. But no, I think with what they've been able to do, I think they've gotten better. Still, I think they've gotten better with their signings. I see the Hedman got re-signed, so that was a big piece, and he should be their future captain, I presume. They've added depth pieces like Gergensons. As a Sabres fan, I'm very familiar with him. He's been with us for 12 years. I think that's a big signing. Believe it or not, even though he's at $850,000 a year for 3-year signing, he's one of those players where I could have easily seen him in Buffalo continue on and continue to be that fourth line. What you're going to get out of the fourth line. He's not really going anywhere above your top 6. But he's going to be down there. He's going to give you all the confidence, and he's really going to stabilize for a very cheap price your fourth line. Maybe even slide up into the third line in different situations. So he's going to be really good for them, I believe. And then obviously Stammer going away to Nashville. We all kind of saw that coming. I did
not see Nashville coming for him.
Well, I didn't see Nashville coming. Him leaving Tampa Bay seemed inevitable, especially when they offered him, $3 million a year, and we can get into taxes and everything later. But I believe Tampa is still a really damn good, really scary team. They still got one of the best goalies in the world. The Gensel signing was huge. I just believe that this is a team that, sadly, the Sabres have to share a division with.
Yeah, and I agree with Chris there that they did get slightly better, but I don't know if it's good enough to win a cup. Do you, Steve?
Well, it depends on goaltending. They're a good defensive.
This team could win a cup.
Yeah, they definitely could. Okay, so just so you can see this here too, Jesse Ylonen, the Habs released him. This guy's money on a penalty shot. Got great hands. Just was not doing it, and you put him with on a line that has more pop to it than what Montreal has at the moment. He could be money in the bank for them. So they've got a deep team, and this is why they're going for it. They're also banking on a big year from Cam Atkinson, really hardworking player out there. So it's a solid team, so they can be up there in contention. But again, we got to see what everybody else does, because we're only day 2 into this insanity, right? So They are a competitive team. Florida and Tampa are making the playoffs again next year. It's just a matter of how deep are they and how strong everybody else gets.
Yeah.
So the next team we're going to take a quick gander on over here at. Okay, we looked at them before already, right? Or did we already cover these guys? We already covered them. Okay, so we'll cut that brain fart out here. Sorry, because I wasn't going down my list.
Ladies and gentlemen, listen to the previous episode for that one.
Yeah. All right. So this team right here is interesting, right? The Boston Bruins. A lot of guys we can gloss over on this part right here because they're not the big signings, but these two right here in particular are decent, right?
Yeah.
Lindholm will be 36 by the time this contract expires, so we'll see. But they needed a defensive replacement for defensive center type of replacement for Bergeron, and Lindholm underwhelmed in Vancouver. That's why Vancouver wasn't jumping all in there to go get him, right? He was pretty underwhelming. So we'll see if he picks it on up. But again, in guys' defense, we say this how often, right? It's all about chemistry and gelling with your team. Yeah. So when you're out there on a trade deadline, you're given a couple of months to fit right on in, and it doesn't always work out that way, right? Zadorov I really like because I love when that big man goes and jumps into the rush, right?
100%.
So typical big, strong defenseman that the Boston Bruins seem to love. Boston, in my opinion, in last year's playoffs looked. How do we really say this? Right? They just didn't look.
they got carried by Jeremy Swayman, who they still do not have under contract. And
yeah.
and this isn't this going to be, and I'm going to call it now. This is going to become a problem for Boston. By the time that this is released in a few hours, he could be signed. You do not know, but in my opinion, trading Olmark, which we just talked about a few minutes ago, on a previous podcast we recorded that will come out much later. Trading, Olmark before you got Swayman locked in. We talked about this not just on that previous podcast, but on a few previous podcasts where we were like, you have to lock Swayman down before you trade Olmark because things can get really, really finicky there. But yeah, no, this team is a playoff team in my eyes.
Well, they're still gonna have Swayman in there.
They somehow make the playoffs every goddamn year. They could look like the shittiest team in the world, and they somehow make the playoffs.
Well, so so with the word I would have described them last year, you can tell they were lost without the leadership of Bergeron in there. Because
it was growing pains from losing your captain,
and they lost a few other good grinder players. So we'll see how good they are and how well they're pushing this year. So they're still doing well. But we'll see how this all pans out, right? Because they traded for another big goalie in the background, right? And the other team that has me interested because they shocked everybody last year, right? This team, the Vancouver Canucks, came out of nowhere, right? And really were stringing together wins, playing really good hockey.
You know why, Steve, right?
Because you moved there, you asshole.
I did. This is people don't understand. When I moved to a city, and this is. You can look at the stats. When I moved to a city, that team just starts winning.
And by the way, guys, I have to bring this up.
I left Buffalo a long time ago. Look what happened to Buffalo. I'm just saying.
So I've never watched this guy play, guys, by the way. Jet Wu. I really hope Jet Wu becomes a star in this league because, God, that's got to be fun to announce if he scores a goal. And scoring tonight was Jet. And everybody, woo! Love it. But anyway, now going back to them, right? So they, Tyler Myers is locked back up again, right? They got DeBrusk. That's good. They've got another grinder who's been deep in the playoffs. Did DeBrusk get a cup with the Bruins back in the day?
I believe he was no, he did not.
Okay, so. But he's been in deep runs with them, right?
He isn't that old.
Yeah. So he's been in deep runs with them, and then
he has been to the Stanley Cup final with them, I believe, when they played St. Louis and lost.
But they locked up another good backup goaltender just in case, right? Derek Forbort, not a bad signing, but Vincent Desharnais, they went and got their big physical defenseman.
They like getting guys from Boston, apparently.
Well, Desharnais is from the Oilers. He was their big bruising defenseman.
I was still on the Derek Forbort thing. I did not realize that he signed from there, and so did DeBrusk. Both guys are from Boston.
Yeah.
So yeah, they like getting their Boston boys over there.
So I still think the big thing for me is they did really well, and re-signing Dakota Joshua was big for them too. In order for them to do really, really well this year, they need a healthy Thatcher Demko. And they need their guys to step back up. Besser has to have the year he had last year. Miller has to have the year. But this is a pretty good hockey team. And like I said, they shocked everybody. I don't think they played above their heads. I think this team finally found their identity and came together. But, gentlemen, I think this is the wrap-up for right now in free agency, right? Because the one thing we are saying is...
Those are the teams that really made moves. And this is a great place to wrap it up. This has been Heath, Steve, and Chris from the Pigeonhole Podcast.
Have a great one, hockey fans.
Thanks for bringing me on again.
Of course. And remember, before you click off, to follow us on all of our social medias. X, it's Post Huggers Pod, and Instagram and Facebook, it is Post Huggers Podcast. That is the same with our threads and also our TikTok. Also, make sure to subscribe if you're listening to this on YouTube. And make sure to follow us and also listen to our podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Remember, always hug your post, guys.